In case you haven't noticed by now, I am naturally, or perhaps programmatically, contrarian. It's simply built into me. And this, I think, or I hope, is why my observations are occasionally so interesting to you, my audience, is that on occasion, at random times, when you least expect it, I come out of nowhere with something you didn't think about, and hopefully I make you think about more than just what I pointed out to you. Or I'm just making noise, and the noise is entertaining, and it's fine. Either way, there's simply no win when it comes to Disney. You can hate Disney and people will hate you. You can give Disney credit and people will hate you. You can ignore Disney and people will hate you. And yes, in case you haven't picked up by now, I'm talking about Star Wars generally, but Disney as a whole kind of has that hold on everything on your planet, doesn't it? And I will wholeheartedly admit, acknowledge, own that I have given Disney grief where Disney deserved to be given grief. For example, I do not hold with the renaming of the Slave One. Yes, I know that the Slave One was always technically a Firespray class assault ship, or at least as long as the Firespray class got retroconned into being the class that Slave One was part of. That's beside the point. Boba Fett's ship, Jango Fett's ship, is called the Slave One. It's called that for a canonical reason that is essential to both of the characters' storyline. And the fact that Disney was not willing to actually say the name Slave One out loud is kind of disappointing, yes. And kind of is an understatement, and disappointing is also an understatement. Likewise, the, what was that abomination called? The Star Fortress? Yeah, that's just horrible. We don't need to rehash that episode, but suffice to say it is simply horrible. On the flip side, I do not care about Star Wars, Disney Star Wars, using an AK-ish MP40 kit bash weirdness rifle as something that the Rebellion would have been using at the very beginning of when the Rebellion was even a concept in the Galactic Empire. I mean, the AK-47 is literally the underground rifle of your entire planet. It makes perfect sense that something patterned like that would be what the rebels started using when they had nothing else available to them. And yes, I know saying that pissed everyone off, but that's what we do here. But this time around, what we're going to do is explain one of the worst downgrades, possibly the worst downgrade that Disney Star Wars has ever made, that happened in one of the best, if not the best, episodes of Disney Star Wars that Disney has ever made. It's very confusing. And the annoying thing is that if I told you the episode, you'd immediately know what vehicle I was talking about. And if I told you the vehicle, you would immediately know what episode I was talking about, because they are both self-contained and intertwined and just stupidly annoying. So instead of letting the proverbial feline out of the proverbial burlap sack, I will simply do this and then tell you afterwards. Any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards. And here we are afterwards. And I could be all coy and weird and silly and clickbaity and all the rest of that nonsense, but you know I don't like that kind of shtick, so I'll just tell it to you straight. Once upon a time in a midnight dreary, we did an episode about the HAV, lowercase w, A6 Juggernaut, and how it is an absolute nightmare. I would say that this thing was hell on 10 wheels, except each of those wheels had multiple wheels inside of it, so it was wheels within wheels, and yo, Doc, I heard you like wheels, so we put wheels within your wheels so you could wheel while you wheel, and oh, by the way, there are Gatling laser cannons, and normal laser cannons, and blaster cannons, and rocket launchers, and enough mass that if this thing ran into an AT-AT, it would knock the AT-AT over, squish it, and keep rolling without even noticing. The Legends and Canonical Juggernaut are absolutely horrifying, not least of all because apparently they were used for like police purposes on Coruscant. And can you imagine the roads necessary to allow this thing to turn around in any meaningful way without, running over buildings? Because again, this thing can contain 300 stormtroopers inside of it. Imagine how large it is and imagine how much it would not give a flying fuck about any building in its way. I need to go that way. I am going that way. And congratulations, you are now the road, regardless of what you are. This is one of the very few Star Wars vehicles that actually lives up to its name. It is a Juggernaut in all form and function. And then things got a little weird. You see, the A6 Juggernaut was the successor to the A5 Juggernaut, as you might expect. And the A5 Juggernaut was only notable in that it was even harder to maintain than the A6. And given that both the A5 and the A6 share the same driveline, that is to say 10 wheels, and each of those wheels are compound wheels that have multiple spinny bits inside of them, and I don't even know how those drive shafts would work, well, at least the A6 had some improvements over the A5, right? You take what you can get. And then the Clone Wars happened, and then the Galactic Civil War happened, and then the New Order happened, maybe. I get lost in the timeline occasionally, periodically, whatever. And then the A9 Juggernaut happens. What happened to the A7 and the A8? No one knows! It's not important. What is important is we're not actually going to talk about the A9. We might talk about the A9 at some point in the future, but we're not going to do it right now. What we are going to talk about is the A9.2. Mark II, version 2, whatever you want to call it. It's still somehow a Juggernaut. And we're not sure why. Okay, let's recap. Juggernauts are big, bad, fast, heavily armed, and have a butt ton of troops on board. They can roll through anything they can't shoot down, and they can shoot down anything they can't roll through. They literally live up to the name. The A9 Mark II Juggernaut is big. Yeah, that's it. That's all it's got. I mean, let's run down the specifics real quick, just because it will actually be really fornicatingly quick. The Mark II does still have the 10 wheels, although they are simply uniform wheels. None of that weird compoundy wheel stuff that the previous Juggernauts had, where if the outer edge of the wheel was slipping, the inner wheels would do just fine. No. These are coherent composite wheels, like you would expect wheels on vehicles on your planet today to work. And in fact, they are very heavily articulated wheels. They do have a decent amount of suspension to them. And that suspension is augmented by the fact that the Juggernaut itself is comprised of at least 5 different sections. There's the forward section that has the command cupola, the cockpit for lack of a better word, and 2 wheels. And then there are 3 cargo sections that each have 2 wheels. And then there's a stern section that also has a cargo section, but is larger than the other 3 cargo sections that also has 2 wheels. The whole thing is articulated. It's a hungry, hungry caterpillar, y'all. And I really can't decide if that actually helps its turning radius or not. I mean, technically, the A5 and the A6 and even the normal A9 Juggernauts are basically a fixed fuselage, a fixed frame. So if they want to turn, they can simply, throw the left wheels in reverse, the right wheels forward, and suddenly you're turning left in, your own radius, your own length. They're kind of like tanks that way. I mean, yeah, sure, it'll tear up the road something fierce, but it's got a 0-foot turning radius. The A9 Mark II, however, given that all the various segments are well segmented and articulated, Well, if you tried to do the same, 0-foot turning radius with that thing, you'd just break every linkage between every segment of the vehicle. It would not go well. It actually has to turn like you would expect a wheeled vehicle to turn, which massively reduces its utility or massively increases the damage it's going to do on everything around it as it tries to make a turn somewhere in the closest, zip code or something like that. But okay, this thing is huge. This thing is not really maneuverable. Obviously, it has a whole lot of troops on board, given that the original, well, not the original, but probably the best Juggernaut had 300 troops on board, right? Right? Nope. This thing has a crew complement of 2. Count them, 1 and 2. Pilot and co-pilot. And there is no space for anyone else. I mean, technically, in the back of the cockpit cupola area, you could probably shove 4 to 8 additional people back there, but that pales in comparison to, again, the 300 troops that his predecessor had. So if this thing doesn't bring, party favors to the party, obviously it brings guns to the party, right? Also, no. This thing is entirely unarmed. Oh no, it does have a quote-unquote loud hailer, by which they mean a loudspeaker, by which they mean just a very loud speaker mounted somewhere on the hull of the Juggernaut. But no, it is entirely unarmed. If you plan on defending this thing, you have to crawl out of the cockpit through the dorsal hatch and then crawl back along the various segments and, actively defend the vehicle while it's under attack. And good news, the cockpit actually has multiple avenues into it. There's that hatch on top, and then there are actually these awesome wing doors on either side where kind of the windows on the port and starboard sides do this lift up kind of thing like you'd see on a DeLorean or a Tesla Model X or whatever the hell. And yeah, you can get in and out of the cockpit really easily, but that doesn't actually do you a lot of good because stormtroopers in this particular vehicle aren't really armed aside from, silly little pistols that apparently break really easily. Yay. This naturally leads to land pirates doing, piratical things and complicated conversations happening after that. But okay, fine. This thing doesn't have, troops on board. This thing doesn't have any weapons at all, not even weapons to speak of. It simply is not armed. So what is the point of this absolute monstrosity? All right. It's meant to carry massively explosive, massively sensitive materials in a totally unarmored, uncontrolled, mostly unlocked box. Because that's the Empire for you. Or I guess technically the New Order in this particular case. But yes, this absolutely monstrously huge, totally undefended, totally unarmored vehicle was meant to transport rhydonium in its raw, unrefined form across the surface of a planet while being shot at. And boarded. And bombed. Because, rhydonium is perfectly stable and absolutely 100% okay with being shot at, bombed, and boarded. Oh wait, no, that's not rhydonium at all. That's something else entirely. Rhydonium hates all of these things. Rhydonium isn't quite like nitroglycerin. It's actually worse. It's ridiculously explosive. It's ridiculously energetic, and it's ridiculously sensitive. So naturally, you would put it in a vehicle that has no defenses, no armor, and can be boarded by the local yokel rando who can get a freaking hover skiff and a bunch of randos together and speed up behind this thing and jump onto it and start strapping thermal detonators to it to blow the damn thing up. It makes total perfect sense, doesn't it? By the great fucking maker. Seriously, this has to be like the absolute worst downgrade of anything that I have ever seen anywhere. Even not confining ourselves to Disney absolute bullshit. I mean, yes, Disney does stupid stuff. We know this. But still, casting our optical sensors across the entirety of science fiction in the entirety of your planet's imagination, name a worse downgrade than the A6 to the A9 Mark II. Because yes, they still do share the name of Juggernaut. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, yes, I would 190% trust an A6 to transport Rhydonium wherever the hell it wanted to go, because that is what they do. They are the armored transport of all armored transports. The A9 Mark II is a glorified panel truck. I mean, regular viewers know that we love ourselves some minivans here in this channel, space minivans of all. And I guess technically the A9 Mark II is technically an articulated minivan? It's a little big for a minivan, let's be honest here. It's got the same basic premise, but it is a little big. And by the great maker, it sucks! But for those of y'all who have hung around this long, I do owe you the other half of this episode, don't I? Because I said the worst Disney downgrade, and yes, the Juggernaut is the worst Disney downgrade, happened during one of the best episodes that Disney has ever made. And that is still technically true. Because this is the episode where Bill Burr's character, this outstanding comedian slash comic, and I always get those titles mixed up on your planet because apparently comedians, I forget how it works out. One of these people says things funny, and the other one says funny things. And I always forget which is a comedian and which is a comic, but that's beside the point. Bill Burr is one of these, and Bill Burr got to be in, I believe, 2 episodes from Mandalorian. And he got to play a certain character by the name of Miggs Mayfield, who used to be a stormtrooper sniper or sharpshooter, whatever they want to call them, and had a falling out with, I guess, the Empire at some point along the way, and kind of absconded from his unit. He has no particular love for the Empire, and even less love for the average Mark I Mod 0 Stormtrooper. He desperately wanted to point out that he was not, in fact, just your rank and file Stormtrooper. He was a special one. And in the first episode, he had this cool little, like, over-the-shoulder automated gun thing, but again, besides the point. In this particular episode, with the Juggernaut in question, Mr. Mayfield said the quiet part out loud, which is absolutely amazing to me. He said the thing that I have always been saying about Star Wars almost from the very beginning. Maybe not during the original trilogy, maybe not during those movies, but once the prequels came out, and especially once the sequels came out, and then additionally once all the ancillary stuff started happening around the sequels, he said what I've been saying for a long time, just maybe not on this channel, although I did say it on this channel just in previous episodes that I don't remember the name of, so don't expect me to go dig those up. Regardless, what he was trying to say is that the only good guys in Star Wars are the randos. The normal people trying to live their normal lives under the thumb of whatever idiotic organization slash government slash crime lord boss family slash whatever the hell else is currently owning their planet on that given day. Because sometimes it changes from day to day to day. And those people just have to keep going about their lives no matter what's happening, doing what they're doing no matter what's happening, and they're actually the good guys. Now, Mayfield technically phrased it a little differently while he and Mando Din Djarin were riding in the Juggernaut. He tried to argue that being a stormtrooper and being a Mandalorian weren't terribly different because both of them were just doing what needed to be done to stay alive. But see, later on in the same episode, Mayfield ran into a previous former commanding officer for himself. And they sat down over drinks and discussed the glory and the wonder that was the Empire. And I really have to give the actor Richard Brake credit. He played an Imperial officer to a goddamn T. It was absolutely amazing. The officer in question was Valen Hess, and he believed every word coming out of his little tiny slimy mouth. And he had such a shit-eating grin while saying every single word. You just wanted to hate the character because he firmly believed that Operation Cinder which was basically Palpatine's scorched earth solution to him being dethroned, was the correct thing to do. And for clarification, Operation Cinder's death toll was somewhere in the billions-ish, give or take a little. And this dude sat down across from Mayfeld and was gloating about it, knowing that Mayfeld was on the ground during it. And to his credit, Mayfeld spoke up about the little people. Was Operation Cinder a win for all those randos on the ground who didn't give a flying fuck about the Empire or the Rebellion or the New Republic or the Old Republic or any of that, but still all the same got incinerated in the orbital bombardment campaign? And Valen Hess said of course it was good for them. And then Mayfeld shot him in the face. Well, technically the chest. I do wish Mayfeld had shot him in the face, but he still shot him. So it's a win all the same. And while we're on the topic, credit to the sand or mud trooper who was just getting his poor blessed lunch and turned around to see this, juggernaut driver shoot this Imperial officer in the chest and was just like, oh, fuck. And then things went sideways for him. So, it was a perfect moment. It wasn't like cinema, but it was pretty good. Let's be honest here. But it's that glimmer of humanity that we saw in Mayfeld that really kind of drives home the point for me about what he was trying to tell Mando in the cab of the Juggernaut. About how everyone is just trying to make do in this random-ass universe where all kinds of bullshit is happening. You've got space wizards over here and planet-destroying crap over there and who knows what else that direction, and it's just all horrible. And everyone's just trying to get by. And this was basically one of the few times, if not the only time, that I felt like Disney actually understood the Star Wars universe, with Mayfeld and Mando talking in that cab of that Juggernaut, talking about how people do what is necessary to be done to stay alive in this absolute madhouse universe. Again, Mayfeld phrased it poorly. Again, Mando wasn't going to listen to him either way because Mayfeld was previous Imperial, right? But if you cut through all the bullshit and listen to the theme, it's not wrong. And the funny thing is that in Andor and a couple other series in the Disney Star Wars universe, there are these throwaway lines about how these rich and pompous assholes can't tell the difference between the New Republic, the Empire, and the Old Republic. Well, yes, because they're all horrible in their own ways. And that's like the superficial Jeff Bezos understanding of the Star Wars universe, but it's not wrong. And all of these rich people whining about how they can't tell the difference is the same for the little people who can't tell the difference, because it's all crap for them. It's all shiny, rich baubles for the rich people, of course, but the little people who have to operate under the heel of whatever organization owns their planet, it doesn't matter whose heel it is, it just matters that there's a heel. And it was really, honestly, kind of weird that Disney took, 2-3 minutes and even highlighted some of the locals on Morak as an example. And they made a whole thing about how it doesn't matter to these people living in the dirt who owns their planet. It's just all a mess aside from that. And then in standard Disney format, they did nothing with that revelation. They dropped it in your lap and expected you to make something of it. And the writers were like, okay, we did our due diligence. Off we go to telling other stories. No big deal now. We're not going to revisit this idea. We're not going to even expand on it. We're going to say we did the nice thing about saying that we cared about the little people, and now off to the big stories. Fine. As much as they did not intend to make an effort, I appreciate that they did make an effort. And as much as they might prefer it be forgotten, well, I guess this episode will be around as long as YouTube is.
And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the docks for more than 24 hours will be compressed into a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.